Okay, so before we move on to the theory and the actual chess, I'm going to try to now give you an overview of the main ideas that I think you need to basically understand throughout the course of this DVD. For white, mainly because you've been playing with white, but also some of the things that black is trying to achieve. Now, I personally think this part of the DVD is probably one of the more useful parts. We will back this up with the theory and the games. But if you know what you're trying to achieve from an opening against each of black's setups, it gives you a big advantage over your opponent, clearly, because you don't need to remember the theory, you just need to remember the ideas. So there's quite a lot to cover in this segment. Now, again, something else I would like to mention is, if we just look at the basic moves here, what advantage does knight to f3 and bishop g5 have over the London system with bishop to f4, which is a move which I play quite regularly? Now, I'll give you my honest opinion, because when I did the London system, the reason I'm going to talk about the London system is that it does link with a Torre, and I want to compare it. So if you know both setups, you'll be able to work out when to use one and when to use the other. And after becoming a bit of a master in the London system, one line I currently think is a way for black to equalise is with the King's Indian setup with g6. Now, in my DVD, I recommend knight c3, d5, and I kind of think these positions are probably quite equal. And I've always thought I quite like having my bishop on g5 in a lot of these structures, because this is why I came to the conclusion I like this bishop g5 move at the right time, combined with knight to f3, and that's why I got into doing this DVD in the Torre, because it's something I've been exploring and I'm getting very excited about playing, because it's a natural development in my chess style. And when you go knight to f3, the advantages are now, after bishop to g5, is that, well, as we're going to see, this just has a little bit more bite, because we do have opportunities to take the knight, and this can help us greatly, especially with h4, h5 plans, which we're going to see, because we're eliminating a piece that defends that one. And our bishop is a little bit more active here. But also, what about our opponent's main ideas often in these setups? Well, one of black's main ideas when the bishop is on f4, the London system, is to go d6 and e5, attacking that bishop. So if you can imagine, with the bishop on f4, black has these ideas, d6 and e5, and the bishop will lose the tempo. But now, black's plans of playing d6 and e5 are much less effective, because he'll be putting himself in a pin, and they just don't really work very well. So we're kind of, it's a great opening against King's Indian defence players. So, these little subtle things, they make a lot of difference. They make the openings completely different. Now, as the first part of this DVD is going to be concentrating on the Nimzo, let's just have a look at your typical ideas against the Nimzo. And also the Bogo Indian. Well, another great thing in this move order here is that we don't play c4. I'm not recommending c4 pretty much throughout this DVD, because this gives us different kind of positions to what I want to aim for here. And the most important way to become good at chess is to understand the plans you're trying to do in the middle game. So what are you trying to achieve? And the plans involved around putting your pawns on c4 and d4 are different to the plans we're trying to achieve in this DVD. We are generally always going to play c3, unless there's a knight c3 at some point. Maybe not now, of course not now, because we want to go bishop g5. But later on, our pawn will stick here. And what advantage does that have over having a pawn on c4? Well, as I've already said in the previous chapter, it gives us this very solid pawn formation, meaning that black will find it a lot harder to get any tactics against our centre. It means it gives us a safer game, but also we still have our aggression, because we can, in a lot of positions, aim for e4. And this is something you don't see so often in the London system, but in the Torre, the pawn is coming to e4 quite often. So there's another thing to bear in mind. But we don't go c3 first. The whole point of the Torre is to pin that knight with bishop g5. Advantage of this, black's bishop b4 check, which is what black often wants to do in a line when you go c4, just doesn't work because we go c3. Black loses the whole tempo, so we cut out that line. And what ideas does black generally have here? Well, ideas with d5 c5 or b6. Let's just have a look at them quickly, one by one. Well, if black goes c5, trying to fight for the centre straight away, there are two moves here. e3 is the standard move, and this is really, I would say, our main skeleton move. It's our main setup we're going to look at, because it fits in very nicely with e3 and knight here. Now, why do we go e3 rather than c3? Because there's a very important thing to bear in mind. When black plays the move c5, as he does here, what piece can he now bring out? Well, the queen on d8 can now come to b6. So we've got to think how we're going to meet that. And with c3, we have to certainly consider this queen b6 move. But there's quite an effective way to meet it if we go e3. And the way we can meet it in these positions is by going knight on b to d2. An interesting pawn sacrifice line, which we'll look at later on. And this gives white fantastic compensation for a pawn. A very dangerous line for black. And this is more effective now because if black takes on b2, well, he's not threatening to take another pawn on c3, which he would be if we had a pawn on c3. And our bishop can develop quicker. So you always have to think if you're going to play c3 or e3 first. And the one little tip I give you is that if there's possibilities to go e4, then I would play c3. But if there's possibilities of queen b6, I would play e3. So against something like b6, it often makes sense to go c3. But again, it's not a major problem. Okay, but let's have a look at some of these setups. So c5, e3. And now, well, there's a number of moves here, but b6 is a very common choice. And another thing we will look at, like I mentioned, the second option, as well as playing e3, is this very interesting move d5, if you want to go for an aggressive and attacking game. And the point of d5 is, well, if black takes on d5, we want to basically get our knight into that square where it'll be very nicely positioned. But if we go knight c3 straight away, d4 is annoying. So first of all, we play e3, and our idea is just to bring the knight to d5, where we'll have a better pawn structure. But let's have a look at some of these main ideas with e3, and I want to get to the middle game positions to try to give you some clues as to what you should be playing. So after this move, well, we'll start with b6. Now, against b6, we can play knight bd2 now, in this position. I should also mention again that the move d5 is even stronger here. This is a nasty, tricky line now because we've already got our pawn on e3. So the move order yet again is very important. And against b6, d5 is actually quite strong because we're now, if pawn takes, we're going knight here straight away. And we'll have a look at this later on, again, in the more theory section. But I want to get to now some typical positions. So rather than playing this after e3, this line with b6, which runs into d5, a very strong idea, black is probably better thinking in order to play bishop e7 first, because this cuts out any d5 ideas. So what should we play now? Well, now we should go knight bd2, because we have no ideas of d5. And black now has two choices. After knight bd2, black has to decide, does black take on d4 now, or does black play b6 first? The third choice, d5, we'll have a look at in a second. Now, if black plays b6 first in this position, it gives us another option. We can play c3, and when black takes on d4, we have two choices. We can take with a c pawn, or we can take with the e pawn. And taking with a c pawn is the kind of position which I think should give white a nice, safe and steady advantage, because your idea now is to go bishop d3, queen e2, e4, and play like this in the center. So that's something worth thinking about. And a very common move here, therefore, is for black to take on d4 in this position. And after b6, this is something I'm sure you'll get a lot of times if you play the Torre. So taking with the e pawn, what lines am I recommending here? Well, again, I like the lines with c3, because I just want to keep my pawns very stabilized here, and it fits in with our setup. Black generally goes bishop b7. Where should we put our pieces? Always think where our pieces are best placed. Bishop on d3, and this is one of the main diagonals in the Torre. And now d6 played. Again, the main move. What else can black play? Well, it doesn't really matter. He can castle first, but as long as we remember the main ideas, which I'm going to show now, we'll see how things go. d6 is a very flexible move. It doesn't block the bishop in. But the one rule I want you to remember in this particular structure, so this is when black has played the Nimzo but taken on d4, and you've recaptured with the e-pawn, is this point here. When black plays d6 and black is ready to go knight d7, the move that I'm recommending in this DVD is to take on f6. Yes, you voluntarily give away your bishop, but the point of this maneuver is that you stop black from taking on f6 with the knight. Why is this good? Well, after bishop takes f6, I'm now recommending we play bit queen e2 with a couple of ideas in mind. Number one, knight to e4 is coming, and that's going to be hitting the bishop on f6. So we've tempted our opponent's bishop to that square. So this is one idea. Another idea is that at some point, let's say when knight d7 is played, we now have two choices, but castling is very normal. And if black castles, another plan, just a plan, a general plan, I really want you to remember, is a plan with bishop c2 and queen d3. So this idea of putting the queen on d3 in certain structures can be very good, and aiming for this pawn on h7. I would play knight to e4 first, because I want this bishop to go back here. And the kind of general idea, so this is not even the right move order here, but the general idea, putting the queen on d3, is why I'm taking on f6 before black can take with a knight on f6. So this is the first thing I just want you to bear in mind. And of course, we'll have a look at more examples of this as we go through the course of this DVD. So this is one idea in this particular setup here. So let's have a look what else can be played. Well, other things to bear in mind, and now I'm just going to get my right work up so we can see what we're talking about. This is now this Nimzo setup we're still with c5 and now e3. So, well, what else is there to play? Well, again, b6 we know is a move order mistake because of d5. Queen b6 will be hit by knight bd2. Again, we'll look at this. Bishop e7 is the best move, and we know what setup we're going for generally here. But what happens if black plays d5? And these are probably the most important positions. So, for example, knight bd2, the d5, because these are the most important positions, because at club level, this is the setup which you're most likely to face. So what are our main ideas in these positions? Well, let me just find the right variations here. And again, the move order, as you can see, is very interchangeable, because you might get d5 here, you might get it next move, but it's what to do against the setup. So let's have a look against c5 and now d5. What do we play against this? Well, we go for our normal development. So now again, queen here is threatened. I want to move my knight first, and now, well, a couple of ways that black can set up. Let's first of all have a look at the black knight goes to d7. We continue our development. So the next stage of our plan is to get our bishop to this square on d3, because this is our main attacking bishop. And the main idea, I'd say this is kind of like where the opening is now over, and you get this set up in the London system with the bishop on f4. But what is the main idea in these positions? This is another key idea. So I'd say one of the first ones we've already gone over is taking on f6 when black has not played d5. But the second thing I want you to remember is that when black has played the pawn to d5, the position we're going for after we finish our development, which we have done now because we've got all our minor pieces developed, is knight to e5. And this is a key move. We want to continue with f4, and our knight is one of the main reasons why the Torre is so popular. And whoever says the Torre is boring Well, have a look at this. This is a game where Anand actually lost to a much lower rated player a lot of years ago, 1988 in Belgrade, but we'll have a look at this more depth later. But this showed White's standard idea. F4, consolidating the knight, and after castles, a very important manoeuvre, and this is all to do with the knight e5 move. So this is a setup against d5. We go knight e5, f4. How do we build up the attack? Queen to f3. This controls the e4 square. Our queen can often come to h3 and attack h7, and all of our pieces. This bishop is our key piece, our light square bishop. It's looking at the black king, and after h6, White even played the super aggressive move here, h4, and this is the kind of aggressive attacking position which I think makes the Torre attack a lot of fun to play. Okay, well, let's have a look at a slightly different move order then, again, just so we keep ourselves on our feet. So after bishop g5, c5, what do we play? We play e3, and now let's say d5 here. Okay, so what do we do? Well, knight b d2. Let's say black goes bishop e7, immediately breaking the pin. Well, again, before we do anything, we complete our development. So c3, knight c6, bishop d3, and now castles. And yet again, what is the main move here? It's going to be knight to e5. Now, knight to e5 immediately is perfectly okay, but you can also castle first. And after castles here, well, let's just say b6 is played. You can't do without this knight e5 move. This is your main striking point. So knight to e5 now, and this is always going to be followed up with a move f4. So just remember, this is your main way to attack in these systems. For example, black can take on e5, which we haven't looked at yet. How do we face this? Well, the simple idea is just by exchanging bishops and playing f4. And again, this is a pawn structure you'll see here, which you will get a lot of times when you're playing the Torre. And what ideas are you aiming to do in this pawn structure? What are your good pieces? What are your bad pieces? Well, again, the bishop on d3, I think, is your main piece in the Torre. And the attack against h7 is one of your main ideas here. You have ideas of either bringing the queen over straight away. So this is one idea you want to consider. Another idea, in some cases, is to bring the rook over. So you bring the rook to h3. Another idea is to even bring the knight over to g5. But everything is kind of aimed over here. And, for example, f6, what should we do against this? Well, something like queen h5 has been played. And against f5, if black ever tries to block your bishop, a move such as g4 is something else you can consider. Try to keep your bishop as free and as clear and as open as possible. And this gives you typical attacking chances. And we'll have a look at this kind of setup later on. So these d5 setups, really the main thing you're trying to do, finish your development and get your knight into e5. So what else what other typical ideas do we need to consider in the opening? Well, other things, we've only just considered the Nimzo. So I think actually we're just I'll just make sure, of course I've got loads of notes here, that we're not going to miss anything against the Nimzo, and then we'll have a look at what typical ideas. We'll break this up a little bit. You can do against the King's Indian and other setups here. But for now, I think really, just to keep it as simple as possible, the Nimzo and the Nimzo setup, the things to remember are, if black plays d5, so hang on a minute, let's get back to that position. If black plays ideas with d5 at some point, we finish our development and we go for, and once we've got our bishop and knight in the game, we go for knight e5. If black avoids playing d5, so let's say black goes b6, again, we finish our development, and when we do finish our development, let's just do that now. What are we trying to do in this position? Well, one of the main things we're trying to do is, can you remember it? Let me give you a little test. After, let's say, castles, d6, what is the key idea here? Well, before black has a chance to take back on f6 with a knight, we take on f6. Why? because a knight is now gone from a defensive h7. We'll have a look at the ideas combined with this more often, but I just want you to remind the basic ideas here. I'll show you why these ideas work very soon, but this is the other thing to really bear in mind. When we try to get our bishop on c2, our queen on d3, attack here, combined with a knight e4, very important key idea. And what else is there? Well, I think we will keep it basically like that for now. We will be having a look at some ideas with h4 later on, but I won't go there for now. So let's stick with that. And now we'll look at typical ideas I want you to remember against the King's Indian setup. So those are some of just basic sort of things you have to remember against the Nimzo setup and the d5 setup. Now we'll have a look, I think we'll break this up into two, against the King's Indian defense setup, and then we really have a look at the main examples of these ideas and the things that you need to know before you can master this opening.